Hello, it's Jay Fisher. Welcome to quality reporting for the Wisconsin IPA for 2025. We've updated some things based on what we learned in the 2024 data collection process and hopefully made things easier based on feedback we've received from a number of people. One of the things that's different is this year, everyone will be loading data into the Macromonitor portal and be able to see the results of what you loaded pretty close to real time. So let's pause here. We'll take a look and find out the specifics of what's different for you. All right, let's get started for EHR users. So when I say EHR user, what I mean is it's the data that you're putting, that you're populating to the IPA, aggregated at the measure level, not at the patient encounter level. And is it coming either from your EHR or from a QCDR or another registry that you use? I know for example, a lot of our ophthalmologists use Verana or some of the clinics use other QCDRs where they report data from MIPS. If you're one of those users, then when you log into Macromonitor, what you're going to do is you're going to go jump directly to the quality link on the left-hand navigator here. So we're going to select quality and upload new CSV. Pretty straightforward, right? So here you're gonna enter the name that you want to you want your file to be identified as in Macromonitor. I would suggest using probably your clinic name and maybe something about the date. So data as of Q1 or something. Just leave this last validation date will always be today's date. The format you're going to select is generally going to be the format for WIPA. Although we have created a couple of unique formats for some other scenarios. There are some clinics who use Verana or Iris. We've created a format that maps more closely to the data that comes directly out of that system. And if you have a format that is unique to you, we'll try and create one of those as well. The purpose of that format is to help make sure that the mapping of data coming out of your source system, EHR, QCDR, matches the mapping that's required in Macromonitor. And the closer we can get a format, the less manipulating of data and moving data between fields you're going to use. So let's pretend we're going to start with the WIPA format. Here you're going to click and you're going to actually navigate to and upload the file that you've created. The category is always going to be quality. The entity type is going to be either group or individual. This is going to depend on how you generated the data from your EHR or how you downloaded it from your QCDR. Where possible, we want to get data at the individual physician level. So if you've got options, if you've got choices in your download and file creation, please choose the physician level, which is the same as individual. If you absolutely can't do that, then you can load data that's aggregated at the group. And the submission type here will always be electronic health record. You're going to click submit. I won't do it now because there's not a file there. But once you click submit, what will happen is back here on the data upload screen, you'll see that file that you generated, and the initial status is going to be something like processing. It should be in the processing status for, depending on the size of the file, probably not much more than 5 or 10 minutes. If it's longer than that, give us a call or reach out and schedule a Zoom meeting to square it up. The other thing that could happen is that if there's an error in your file, then this status column will show an error. Generally, it'll be somewhat descriptive of what the error type is. And if that happens, there will be a log file. There'll be an icon here for a log file. You'll be able to click on the log file and it'll create a spreadsheet to download that will tell you the specific problems with the file you created. If you most of the time you should be able to figure that out and make the corrections and re-upload. If you can't, again, reach out to someone on the C3 team, me or one of my other colleagues, either with a phone call or an email or use the calendar widget on the dashboard page. Now, there's one other thing that's going to be useful to you in in creating the file that loads the data. And what we've done is we've created some. So when you select this format, so if you select WIPA to download, there's a link that says download here, and that download will create a spreadsheet file or CSV file. It has nothing but the headers, so you'll be able to copy your data into that spreadsheet. You may have to realign columns to line up with the headers and line up with the headers in the template that you're using. So if you're using WIPA or if you're using Verana or some other template. Now, you might want a little more information or a little more insight as to what those columns mean or how they should be formatted. So we've given you a little bit of help with that this year. If you click on this link that says admin, you'll see another link here that says public file. Click on that public file link. And here we populate a number of files that are useful for people in understanding quality and using the system. And there's two files here that are of interest. There's the WIPA EHR data file template and the Verana data file template. And later on, if we add other other template formats to make it easier for people, you'll be able to access those. So generally, you're going to want to click on this link to download. And the download's you'll click on the pop-up to download an Excel. And then let's take a minute here and look and see what's in that Excel file that has the instructions. So when you download the Excel file, you're going to see. So I chose the WIPA template. This first row, the heading row, all the data that you populate into this file needs to follow column sequences and use these exact same column names. So regardless of how it comes out of your system, you've got to remap the content into this. And what we did is we tried to put in some comments here that can be useful to explain what that column, what that data is expecting. So for example, on NPI, if the data load is at the physician level, which we prefer, then you're going to put in the physician NPI associated with each row in the spreadsheet. If the data is at group level, which is acceptable but not as preferred, then you'll leave the NPI blank. You're always going to populate the TIN, regardless of whether the data is physician or NPI level. Probably the trickiest thing to do in this whole spreadsheet is mapping the correct measure IDs. So what Wisconsin IPA uses for quality measure IDs is we use the CMS QPP measure ID. CMS has ECQMs, they have QPP, they have NQF. They have all different schemes for which they identify quality measures. So an individual quality measure could have 2 or 3 different values that identify it. Generally, and the EHR or the QCDR will generally reference one of those. The one you want to choose to populate into this field is the QPP measure. It might also say the MIPS measure value. That measure is always going to be, or that measure ID, it's always going to be 3-digit numeric, with the exception of some measures like smoking cessation status that have multiple strata. In that case, the data coming out of your EHR will list the multiple different strata. It might be listed as 226-1 or 226A or 226.1. The format that Macromonitor expects is the same format as if you were uploading this to CMS, and it's always going to be in the form of 226.1, 2, 3. You may be loading QCDR measures like Iris or Aqua, and if you're doing that, then the format for the measure ID is to include the QCDR, the 4-digit QCDR. Or sometimes it's 5-digit or character QCDR ID. In this case, it would be Iris, and then the number with no spaces. If you have any questions on this or things aren't loading, give me a call and we'll update. We'll figure out together what the correct values are that you should be pulling out of the EHR. The rest of the columns should be fairly straightforward. So the numerator in most EHR reports is going to say numerator. In some cases, it might say met. Numerator and met are synonymous. Denominator, again, is most of the EHR reports are going to say denominator. Some, though, might say patient population, eligible patient population, or initial patient population rather than denominator. If they have that value, use that value and populate it into the denominator field, leaving the heading to say denominator. Dates always fit in the format of DD, MM, and then YYY. Start date's almost always going to be January 1st. End date is a little tricky though. End date should always be a month in. So even if, so let's say you were doing data for the first 6 months and the last patient encounter you had was June 28th. Even in the case where the last date in your file is June 28th, the end date should always be the end of the month. So in that case, it would be June 30th. The last set of columns are generally going to come directly out of the report on EHR or QCDR, and the content is optional. If the report has these values, populate them. If not, just leave them blank. Now let's talk a little bit about what are some of the basic rules in creating the file. First rule is each row in the file that you upload should contain one measure, one physician. That's assuming that you're loading data in the preferred level at the level of individual physician. If you're just loading data at the clinic level, then it's one row for 10 per measure. When you've got all the data loaded, save the file as a CSV. If you're using this particular template, be sure and delete all of these notes. There's superfluous data that won't process. If you just download the template directly from the data upload screen in Macromonitor, these instructions and notes won't be there, and you don't have to worry about that. And then the naming convention for the file, again, should be similar to that which you would use when you're naming the file as you upload it. So it's probably something like your clinic name and the date range. When you do the file save, you file save as a CSV. Try not like spaces in the file name. If you have places where you need a blank space, use the underscore character instead. And that should be it. It should be a fairly simple process. Download the template, map the data from your system into the template, and then use the upload tool in Macromonitor. Once you've uploaded, let's walk through what. All right. So then the last step is to review the data that you've loaded and make sure that it looks right, that the measures that you intended to load are all appearing, and the values look reasonable based on what you expect your performance to look like. One point before we go too far, and that is it's going to be a very good practice when you're doing an upload, let's say from one quarter to another, one half of the year to another, is to always come out to the monitor. I'll go into admin, public file, and download the most current file template. Just take a review of it, make sure that nothing has changed. Every now and again, it's possible that we'll change our system, and what's going to happen is the most current content, the most current rules will always be documented in the files that you find here. So once your data is loaded, you're going to want to come into the system and click on the quality link. You'll default to the data upload page, and on this page will be a list of the file that you uploaded together with its status. If there have been errors, there'll be an error message in the status and a log file you'll download and work that log file to make the corrections and then re-upload and then re-upload the file. Once you've got a status here that says completed, then you want to go and check your content, and you'll do that again from the same place, from quality in CQM details. Now, in CQM details, before your data displays, you're going to have to do a little configuration. Um, you'll notice there's a radio button here that defines registry or EHR. Whether you're submitting from your EHR or QCDR, you want to select the EHR radio button and the screen will change. And then the selection will be between system generated and client generated. Here's what that means. Remember, we prefer that you load your data with physician level of detail. This screen shows an aggregation of roll up at the clinic. So if you've loaded physician level detail, then the Mapper system will do the roll up to show clinic summary totals, which is how you're evaluated at for your WIPA score. So if you loaded your data at physician level of detail, you want to select the radio button for system generated, and a couple of things are going to happen from that. One is the data will appear here, roll up at the clinic level. And then if you want to look at individual physician, you click on this physician CQM details. And it will show you for physician by physician. You'll click a drop down here to see each physician. Again, you'll have to select EHR. For each physician, you'll see the quality measures for that physician. You'll also be able to click on the measure CQM data to see for a given measure at the clinic level how each physician contributed to it. But back here at the 10 CQM details level, if you were not able to get physician level or individual level data from your EHR or from your QCDR, and you're dealing with content where the roll up the clinic has done by your system, and we're going to call that client generated. You have to select the client generated radio button to see the group level attributes that are rolled up by the client. And that's about it. We strongly encourage you to take a look at data, analyze it, see does it seem to represent the number of encounters that you're expecting to see in the denominator. Do the scores look about right? And if not, then schedule a Zoom session with the calendar widget on the homepage, and we'll get together and we'll figure out what differences need to be posted. That review process is a very normal part of quality reporting, and your judgment in how you expect things to look is also an important element. That's all for now. Thank you.